Ready? Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Hi, this is Tino with Music You Can See. We're here with Greg Rzab. He is a blues bass player who has an incredible history. The history goes way back. Started first with Otis.
Otis Clay?
But before that...
Otis Rush. Otis Rush was really my first. I was about 21 or something. Otis Rush was really my first big blues gig. And interesting that I used to get a lot of calls on the blues scene, and Casey Jones, who was the drummer, was playing with Albert Collins at the time, would call me for gigs. Got a gig tonight, Kingston Mines, be there. And I'm like, cool, I'll see you. I didn't even know who I was playing. I walked in and it was Otis Rush, one of my heroes. So I walked into a gig with Otis Rush, didn't even know it was going to be.
And you're 21 years old?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Usually doesn't start that way.
No. Well, it starts even earlier than that, but this gig with the Otis was the thing that really launched it. And after I played that night, Otis said, I really like you. I want you to be my bass player. So I played with Otis for a few years.
And recently you ran across an article, an interview with him, correct?
Otis Clay.
That was Otis Clay, not Otis
the great
Rush.
Soul singer, the great gospel singer. So I was playing with Otis Clay before that when I was about 19 or so, playing in churches in Chicago, playing soul music. In his band, I was touring a little bit with him playing soul music, but he also would do these gospel gigs. So I learned his whole gospel set and would go play all these big churches in Chicago on the south side in the ghetto where there was 5,000 people and I was the only white guy in there. So that was pretty great education to playing in those black churches in Chicago.
And recently he passed away.
Just weeks ago.
And you came across an Italian article with where he mentions you in it.
In Italian, yeah. I'm very flattered by this. Somebody was asking him about his soul and gospel roots, and the question was something to the effect of your bands have been always black guys. Is there a particular affinity to using black musicians? And in this article, which is what I'm really touched by, he goes, well, to be honest, one of my favorite bass players ever was Greg Rzab. So,
nice.
Very cool.
Nice.
That same day I read that, my mother called me that night and said, did you see Otis Clay passed away? So it was a big coincidence. I had just read that article that afternoon. Big loss. Great singer. Whew.
Yeah, we're losing him.
Yeah.
So you're from the Chicago area.
I'm from Chicago,
and then
a town called Harvey on the south tip of Chicago. Grew up listening to, I've always been listening to, when I was 4 years old, in kindergarten they have show and tell where everybody brings something in.
Right.
I dragged in my little 45 record player, and I grew up in an all-black neighborhood, mostly black, predominantly black, and I dragged in my little 45 record player, set it up, and I played Yardbirds For Your Love.
Wow. Wow, in kindergarten.
To a classroom full of black people, and they were looking at me like, well, okay, what is this? Yeah, I was in kindergarten. I was a Yardbirds fan.
Wow.
Which is as it turns out, how things cycle. I have played with Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and Jeff Beck.
Which is interesting because when Clapton left the Yardbirds to join John Mayall,
yes,
Page replaced him?
No, Peter Green replaced him.
Peter Green replaced him.
The great Peter Green. But I asked John once about it. Did you ever... he said that he offered Jimmy Page the gig at one point, and Jimmy said no, because he was really a prolific studio musician at the time in London and had a ton of work. So he said no to John. Peter Green replaced Eric Clapton, and then Mick Taylor replaced Peter Green. I even have Burt Bacharach is one of my favorite all-time songwriters, musicians, and I recently found it's called Bacharach Plays His Hits, which was recorded in England, and Jimmy Page is playing on it, and Paul Jones. Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones on a Burt Bacharach record.
Interesting. I would have never thought those two paths would
I didn't know
cross.
that. I read it in Burt's book, and I'm like, wow. So I actually had that vinyl because I'm a huge Bacharach fan, and I played it. And I'm like, sure enough, it's Jimmy Page,
You know, I was
who I toured with, by the way.
Page.
Yeah,